One of the arguments used against much prophecy teaching is that it is a modern invention and not sound biblical teaching. However, Irenaeus is one of the oldest biblical teachers we have outside of the Bible itself, and his life was dedicated to combating false doctrine. His teaching about the end times or last days is just the same as you will find from many modern prophecy teachers today. The following passage from Book 5 of Against Heresies contains some of the basic elements of Bible prophecy that we still recognize today. The Antichrist will be on earth before the return of Jesus and will reign from Jerusalem for 3.5 years, the second half of the 7-year period that we know as the tribulation. The Lord will return and the Antichrist will be placed in the bottomless pit. This will be followed by a period of rest, the hallowed seventh day that we now refer to as the millennium. This is from Against Heresies, Book 5, chapter 30 verse 4. But he indicates the number of the name now, that when this man comes we may avoid him, being aware who he is. The name, however, is suppressed because it is not worthy of being proclaimed by the Holy Spirit. But if it had been declared by him, he, Antichrist, might perhaps continue for a long period. But now, as he was and is not, and shall ascend out of the abyss, and goes into perdition, Revelation 17:8, as one who has no existence, so neither has his name been declared. The name of that which does not exist is not proclaimed. And when this Antichrist shall have devastated all things in this world, he will reign for 3 and 6 months, and sit in the temple at Jerusalem. And then the Lord will come from heaven, in the clouds, in the glory of the Father, sending this man and those who follow him into the lake of fire, but bringing in for the righteous the times of the kingdom, that is, the rest, the hallowed seventh day, and restoring to Abraham the promised inheritance, in which kingdom the Lord declared that many coming from the east and from the west should sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In Books 5 of Against Heresies, Irenaeus makes many references to the kingdom period, which we know as the 1,000-year millennial era when Christ rules on earth. This is from Book 5, chapter 5, verse 1. For all these and other words were unquestionably spoken in reference to the resurrection of the just, which takes place after the coming of the Antichrist and the destruction of all nations under his rule. In the times of which resurrection the righteous shall reign in the earth, waxing stronger by the sight of the Lord, and through him they shall become accustomed to partake in the glory of God the Father, and shall enjoy in the kingdom intercourse and communion with the holy angels, and union with spiritual beings, and with respect to those whom the Lord shall find in the flesh, awaiting him from heaven, and who have suffered tribulation, as well as escaped from the hands of the wicked one. So we see that after the return of Christ and the destruction of the Antichrist, only the righteous shall remain on earth. That is, those believers who have come through the tribulation period. Irenaeus goes on to explain that those believers will go on to multiply upon the earth. The earth itself will be renewed by the glory of God, and Jerusalem rebuilt. The beginning of Book 5, chapter 35, verse 2 says, But in the times of the kingdom, the earth has been called again by Christ to its pristine condition, and Jerusalem rebuilt after the pattern of the Jerusalem above. After the time of the kingdom will come the final day of judgment, also known as the Great White Throne Judgment. This will be the last day of this age, when all things are judged. Book 5, chapter 35, verse 2. And in the Apocalypse, John saw this new Jerusalem descending upon the new earth. Revelation chapter 1 verse 2. For after the times of the kingdom, he says, I saw a great white throne, and him who sat upon it, from whose face the earth fled away, and the heavens, and there was no more place for them. Revelation chapter 20 verse 11. And he sets forth too the things connected with the general resurrection and the judgment, mentioning the dead great and small. The sea, he says, gave up the dead which it had in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead that they contained, and the books were opened. Moreover, he says, the book of life was opened, and the dead were judged out of those things that were written in the books according to their works. And death and hell were sent into the lake of fire, the second death. After this event all things are renewed. Book 5, chapter 35, verse 2. To the same purpose did the Lord also declare, heaven and earth shall pass away. Matthew chapter 26, verse 35. When these things therefore pass away above the earth, John the Lord's disciple says that the new Jerusalem above shall then descend as a bride adorned for her husband. Irenaeus gives many details about the millennial period and the new age after it. Also in Book 5 he addresses the age he is living in and shows that both the Apostle John and Daniel predict the existence of the Roman Empire, that is Babylon, before the return of Christ and its destruction. Book 5, chapter 26. John and Daniel have predicted the dissolution and desolation of the Roman Empire, which shall precede the end of the world and the eternal kingdom of Christ. In every chapter of Against Heresies, Irenaeus refutes heresies and bad doctrine that were prevalent in his time. In fact, these heresies are still extant today in one form or another, and will be until the return of the Lord. Thank you for listening. If you found this interesting, you can find more information at prophesy-workshop.com.